My name is Austin Dressman. I'm the Community and Events Manager at Engaging Networks. And today we're very excited to be joined by Mark Becker, who is the founding partner at Cathexis Partners. He's going to share his extensive experience with peer-to-peer strategy, setting it up for the first time, refining an existing campaign. Just lots of knowledge coming from Mark there. We're really excited to hear from him on this. And then we also have our own John Simatowski, who's our enterprise solutions architect at Engaging Networks, and he'll be chiming in when things come up when it comes something specific to Engaging Networks. If there's some time in Q&A, if you have any specific questions about parts of the peer-to-peer module that we have at Engaging Networks, or anything else that might come up. So both of them extremely knowledgeable on peer-to-peer. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things off to Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Austin. And hi, everyone. As Austin said, feel free to ask questions along the way. We're happy to address those, and we'll also have time at the end. Just quickly about myself, I'm the founding partner of Cathexis Partners. Started the company 18 years ago, actually the first of next month, right when the market crashed. I thought that was a great time to start a business, and we're still managing to be here. We help nonprofits with technology, platform selection, technology support, web developers, designers, peer-to-peer professionals. Before I started this company, I was over at Event 360 as the IT director, working and supporting different campaigns like the Susan G. Komen 3 Days. So, been doing this for a minute. Like John, the hair is not a fashion choice. It's just life, and we bring some experience to this. But everybody on here has their own experiences, and we look forward to having kind of a conversation about this, right? So we're going to start off with a poll. Hopefully, we can do this right. I'm always screwing these up when I do these things. So the poll is, we'd like to get a feel for who's on here. And the question is, what types of peer-to-peer does your organization currently offer? And so feel free. We'll leave this up here for a moment or two. Take a moment to fill that out. Love to get a feel for who's doing what types of campaigns, if anything. And so we'll give folks a moment. Uh, yeah, it's a single choice. So whichever one is kind of your primary, your hopefully, and I will probably, I've looked at my slides a lot, and I will probably beat it into the ground that you shouldn't be doing just one event. You should be doing a lot of them. But the way the question is set up, unfortunately, it's just kind of one option. So kind of what is your primary? And all right, I think we're probably good there. Uh, fair, pretty good, fair amount of folks doing DIY and walks and runs. So that's kind of as expected and to be expected. So not surprising there. So let's kind of dig in, right? For those of you that aren't doing any peer-to-peer yet, I just want to spend a second on the basics of this, right? Traditional fundraising organization makes a connection with a constituent, somebody in the community, and they donate to them, right? Peer-to-peer fundraising is reaching their friends and contacts. Normally, I mean, a donor might be a donor or supporter of a fundraiser in a peer-to-peer campaign, might also be a direct donor to the organization, but historically, your constituents, your past donors will become your fundraisers, and then they'll ask their network of friends and family and coworkers to support them, and that's how they'll learn about you as an organization for the first time. So that's something I'm going to be coming back to, and we're going to be beating that drum quite a bit, is really looking at supporting your fundraisers, but also getting to know those donors, and more importantly, or equally importantly, having those donors get to know you, right? And John, feel free to jump in and add any commentary anywhere along here.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that relationship between the fundraiser and that donor, I think there's a lot of organizations that miss the opportunity to attempt to engage the donors. Not that you're necessarily going to remove the fundraiser from that equation, but it's an opportunity. Let them, put it out there if they want to subscribe to learn more about your organization. They cared enough to make a gift to support their friend who is clearly involved in your organization. there's an opportunity to expand that. And maybe that leads to a larger gift from that donor for next year's peer-to-peer fundraiser to that same fundraiser. So maybe you're just embellishing what your fundraiser is able to do. So don't think that it's completely hands off, but do respect that relationship that your fundraiser has established with that donor.
Yep, well said. All right. So just more basics. You know, the whole goal is to bring in new constituents that otherwise may not know you. And it all started with kind of runs and walks, right? Back in the 80s or even earlier, 60s maybe. And in fact, there's a professional organization that's now known as the Peer-to-Peer Professional Forum that was originally called Run, Walk, Ride. And then they realized, oh, wait, there's other things, DIY, all of that. So third party fundraising. So they did some rebranding, and I think it kind of talks to the overall direction that the industry is going and where we're going to suggest that you all go to. So you really need to think about a complete portfolio of peer-to-peer campaigns. And you might be on this call and not have any peer-to-peer campaigns yet, but what we're saying is basically start with one and then with a larger plan of thinking how you can kind of grow it from there. Or maybe you just have one campaign, but it's a year long evergreen campaign that allows people to fundraise however they want to. And let's kind of drill into that, right? Historically, again, peer to peer has been about events. Events are great, but they take a lot to coordinate. They're really time intensive and resource intensive. They're expensive and they normally involve porta potties. So I'm not saying don't do events, but just be aware that you have to deal with all those things. And not always the most fun. There's other ways to do peer-to-peer fundraising without having an event. If you have an event, awesome. It's a great way to really energize your community, bring them together, have a sense of community, and really get that euphoric feeling that you can only get at a physical, event. But it does take a lot of time and money.
I have a great a porta potty tip here. So if you want to know how many porta potties you need for your event, the formula is one porta potty per 100 people per hour of your event. So do the math, and I'll tell you how many porta potties you need.
I like
You
it.
weren't expecting to get that kind of detail today. You just got it.
I like it. I like it. Um, so the challenge is most nonprofits have one event and not a portfolio. Supporters want to be engaged year round, right? The old model, one event, recruit, fundraise, celebrate, and then you're just gone, right? 11 months later or however many months later, you open up registration again and you start the cycle over again. And those participants and those donors, might feel like what happened, and all of a sudden they start getting, barrage of emails again. It's looking at kind of the overall community and figuring out what that communication schedule can look like. These days you don't just take donations one way, so don't limit your fundraisers either, right? So again, if you're only looking at your walks or your runs, that's one participant type, but you're leaving out memorials and tributes and all these different audiences, gamers, poker players. There's a lot of ways, cyclists, bikes, all these things that uh, they want to fundraise for you, so don't limit them. These days, donation forms, you have a ton of ways, hopefully, that you're allowing people to support you, right? Different giving levels, one time, sustained giving, DAFs, workplace giving, corporate partnerships, giving stocks, and then cryptocurrency, um, uh, mobile wallets, all these different ways to donate, right? I'm saying also extend that to your peer-to-peer participants, right? Give them a way to support your cause however they want to, however they're comfortable. This is a great example that was rolled out by another partner and a client of theirs that I think is a great example of just all the different ways you can fundraise and let them decide. And this is all within one campaign. Um, Maybe they're doing a local 5K. Maybe they're doing a marathon. They can register for an athletic activity, and it's all within that one campaign, right? So virtual campaigns make it really easy for folks to be able to fundraise on your behalf. Um, So think about not just walks and runs, DIY fundraising, birthdays, right? Tributes and memorials. If you happen to be on Facebook, I'm sure when your birthday comes around, faith, you get those messages from Facebook. Hey, set up a fundraiser. All of those things. Live stream fundraising is becoming more and more popular. Um, and then influencers, right? Um, if you happen to have a celebrity or an influencer or someone that's just really has a big network of supporters, work with them, partner with them, and set up a campaign for them. Help them to help you fundraise. Different challenges, workplace giving. It's not just one way. But these don't all have to be individual campaigns. They could be, as the previous example showed, all kind of set up in one campaign. What is the right, kind of approach really depends on your staffing, how much you're fundraising, and your community, the size of your community, right? Um, I put in the description for this session, kind of laying out what's the best type of campaign for the different types of organizations. So I created this chart and then I kind of blew it up myself because this chart, I mean, it looks kind of cool, I think, if I do say so myself. But you can see, and it makes sense, 100%, like faith-based. What works well, not so much walks, but DIY fundraising, tributes and memorials, right? Workplace giving, not so much live stream gaming. That makes sense. It's not really the audience for it, but there might be a church or a specific group of faith-based community that is really into gaming, so that might be a great fit for them. Healthcare, has 1 star next to gaming, and yet one of the biggest, if not the biggest, live stream gaming is St. Jude's. And Children's Miracle Network also does a lot with that. So, children's hospitals also. So, it really depends on your specific audience and what fits. So, I created this matrix, but then I also kind of blew it up and looked at the peer-to-peer top 30 from last year. And if you're not familiar with this organization, check them out. The links there, these are links there's links to these sample campaigns and available in the actual deck that we'll be sharing after the fact. And this is definitely a huge eye chart. And there's a lot of ways that we can slice and dice this information. But one of the things I wanted to call out is the number of cause and cure is really large in the top 30. And that's all the orange ones there. But one of the bigger events, 20 at number 22, is a live streaming event. Visionaries of the Year, number 13, is more of a kind of DIY influencers type of campaign. Um, Number 24, Movember, is not specifically focused on a specific event. So there's more and more of these creeping up into the top 30 that aren't even focused on actual physical events. That's just kind of one way to look at all this data. I don't know, John, where does your head go when you see these kind of things?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of generational thought here as well because as markets evolve, as where peer-to-peer events really started, these big walks and rides started with the baby boomer generation back in early 70s, and that's like March of Dimes was one of the originators of that. And so that was bringing a lot of people out to get together for a cause, to have a walk event. Other organizations started doing them. Bike events started to come out the late 70s, early 80s. At Pan Mass Challenge was one of the innovators there. And everyone looks to the success of these events they see in their own market and other markets and say, hey, how can we do that as well? But then, hey, the economic downturn of 2008 started to have an effect on the fundraising of a lot of these groups, largely because the leading edge of the baby boomers started to retire, so they weren't in the workplace fundraising anymore. So we saw it as was people don't really pick up on the generational aspect of that, but I think that's a key factor for as you look at the ebb and flows of peer-to-peer fundraising events. But And then this thing called COVID happened, and that really changed the world.
Hmm.
The large people weren't coming out to events in 2020 and 21. Most of them were canceled or turned virtual. But then within that, there was then these new opportunities for things like personal challenges, like a push-up challenge, and finding new ways with new technology to do different types of fundraising, appealing to new generations as well. So I think you have to be aware of who your supporter base is. I think one of the most important things you can do with any of your supporter list is, do you have any demographic data of like what's the age of our supporters? That's going to help you understand which directions you might go with your peer-to-peer events.
Well said. So well, I did that other matrix about what type of organization should have what type of campaign. I also did it this way as far as, what kind of emotional trigger are you looking to focus on, or you want to celebrate someone, a birthday, you want to remember somebody, obviously a tribute or memorial. You want to compete, runs, walks, endurances. So it really, and again, it just comes back to provide them with the ways to do this by setting up DIY campaigns and let them fundraise for you how you want, and give them toolkits to make it possible and easy to fundraise for you, right? And more on that in a second.
Mark, in the Q&A, we have a question about
Yeah.
during COVID with some of those new ways that organizations created fundraising, peer-to-peer fundraising events. What do you think has stuck? What do you think has worked? Are there things that didn't work that have kind of gone away now that, participation events are back in vogue again?
There was a huge peak. One of the things that has kind of gone out a little bit was live stream fundraising, because obviously that made a lot of sense with COVID. So that everybody was like stuck in their houses and wanted to connect with other people and however they could, and influencers and gamers and a lot of folks found that, oh wait, I can chat with people, I can connect with people this way. So that has come down a bit, but it's still a very active scene. And if you have the right, so live stream fundraising, I think, is one that has definitely popped up and blew up during that time. It's been around longer than that, but has come back down again. But I think it has a lot of potential. I will say it's one of those that if you're not in with that community, or if you don't have a connection to that community or know somebody that's connected in that community of live streamers, then it's probably not the right fit for you. That's the first one that comes to mind. Average run, walk, rides definitely saw a down. I mean, obviously, they were all canceled initially, but they've been coming back more and more since then. And we're back to where um, the questions are the registrations are coming back, and the donations are kind of increasing in equal part to like inflation, like 3% a year across the board for the top 30. I don't know, John, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I've been a participant in the Bike MS series for 32 years now, and I worked for the National MS Society for 5 years as well. So the event I used to organize, the Cape Cod Getaway, back in our heyday in 2007, we had 1,700 riders. This year we had 750. And so when they announced that at the start line, I'm back as a rider now. I'm not on the other side of the registration table. I'm out there with everybody else. I just was like, okay, it's ticking back up, and we had canceled that event in 21 and 20 and 21 because it occurs in June. Came back in a small way in 22, but it's been on the rise. So yeah, I think we're kind of resetting some of the event types that are out there. So definitely the athletic participation events, whether they're run, walk, ride, any type of running programs are definitely back on the uptick as well.
Hmm.
Um, Mark, there's also a question here. We're referencing your prior slide about some of that emotional motivation. How do you think organizations should think about that when they're picking out what's right for them? My first thought is maybe do a survey, ask some of your participants what their connection is, what their reason is. But what thoughts do you have there about that prior slide where you're showing some of that emotional connection?
Yeah, so to find out, let me see if I can hit backspace here. Where your audience is, that's what you need to know, and you need to listen to your constituents, right? Capturing standard metrics of who's donating, how much they're donating, all important stuff, right? But wherever possible, find out more about them. Ask poll questions, like we did at the top of this webinar. Find out, talk to folks. You can put out a bunch of different, like I said, if you set up a DIY campaign and fundraise your way, kind of see where your audience is leaning. And based on your actual mission, you might have some natural understanding of what resonates with and what makes sense with based on your mission. But really lean into that and get those images out there, create the toolkits that really lean into the emotional connection to your mission, and then tie it back into the kind of ways that people can fundraise. And we'll kind of talk some more about that here as well. Create a compelling story. And once you get fundraisers to start fundraising for them, ask them to share their story. Your top fundraisers from one year or from a specific campaign, maybe it's end of year kind of fundraising for the holidays, and someone really blew it out of the water. What was their secret sauce? And you'll probably find out that they are just a naturally gifted and have a lot of connections, or they might be accidentally like, I never thought I'd raise this kind of money, but I really just had a story to tell, and my community just kind of came around me and helped share those stories, and make that part of your communication to your larger audience, so that they can see it doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be hard to fundraise, and no one should be afraid to ask. You always be consistent with your brand, right? Obviously, your participants are going to do what they're going to do as far as posting about themselves, doing your participating in and fundraising on your behalf. The more of a toolkit, again, you can provide them with pre-branded banners, social media, ads, those type of things, the less they will kind of take your brand in the wrong direction. But also know that you'll never have complete control of the message, and you shouldn't. You're putting it out there. In this day and age, people know that uh, individuals all have a loud voice, and they should, and most of them are going to use it for good, and focus on those folks. Make sure that you have a good communication plan. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. And part of that includes coaching, right? You want to focus on registration to get people involved in the, event registration or the overall campaign. And then once they're registered, you want to coach them. Maybe it's just again sharing success stories and how people fundraised. Give them 3 tips to get their first donation, their first 3 donations, their first $100. Set up milestones, give things, make sure you're giving people shout outs, however you can, as much as you can automate that using an advanced system, like engaging networks, the better. Provide them some flags and show them that they've been successful, they've reached their first milestone, they've gotten their t-shirt because they raised $100 or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think also with peer-to-peer, where you've got all these tools which can do automated notifications and put people in marketing automation journeys, that don't ignore the high touch aspects of this as well, of getting your, maybe, if you're in a larger organization, you have major gift officers or you have an annual fund team. I know when I worked at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, we had a honor memorial site we called Giving Pages, and it was one gentleman who had been successfully treated at the Dana-Farber. And he then was so happy about the fact that he was still around, because of the great care he received and just the level of care he received, that he then went out and raised $300,000 in a matter of, I think, 2 months. Clearly, the man had connections, but it was because of the great work that our annual fund team did of communicating with him, and then coming to us on the tech side to say, hey, can you do this as a customization? Because this guy's got this. And like, so when we on the tech team understood the opportunity, we said, sure, let's give this guy, we were delighted that he was still around too. And so we said, sure, let's help out. And so that really drove this one particular person to raise a ton of money, like way beyond what we typically see on an honor memorial site. But it's that opportunity, being aware of your fundraisers and looking for those opportunities to help them.
Oh, and I love this question that just came in. How do you balance automated coaching and milestone recognition with meaningful personal outreach, especially for organizations with limited staff? Not easy, right? It's a great question. You automate all of the things that you can using the tech that you have, right? And build those into those milestone recognitions into there, so it's automatically being triggered based on an activity, a milestone, something they've done. But that should hopefully, in theory, free you up to be able to communicate and reach out. And that's all based on metrics, right? And keeping your thumb on the pulse of and listening in on how the campaign is going, right? And really paying attention. And even if it's just a matter of setting up a recurring item in your calendar once a week to check a report, see who's reached a certain milestone or who's kind of paused and who hasn't raised anything yet, and reach out to them. And a half hour, an hour of just shooting out, create a couple templates, not make it sound like a kind of a mechanical or AI type of thing, but just have them in your ready to go in your toolkit, so you can email out and say, hey, we noticed that you did X, you reached a milestone, or you updated your personal page, and your story is really profound, great job, and then pick up the phone whenever you can. But yeah, it's easy to say with limited staff, but find the time where you can.
Yeah, and when you're using those automated tools, don't have them come from info at and then have them signed the annual giving team. No, use your name as the sender, even in these automated messages, so it looks like it's coming from a person, because honestly, it is. You set up the automation, and then in the body of that message, include your photo, your name, your title, and your contact info. When I worked for the American Diabetes Association, I was rebuilding a walk team in Eastern New England. And one of the pieces of advice I gave to my newer event managers was, on event day, do not tie yourself to a position at the event. Do not work the registration table. Do not unload the truck. That's why you have volunteers to do those things. You are there to be in the rock star receiving line. I know Ace Frehley would burst into the room at the moment using the word rock star too easily. Um, but uh, but Ryan then told me after the event, he says, you were so right. Everyone wanted to come up and meet me, because during that event, he had communication where he was leveraging his experience working at working at a diabetes camp, about why it was so important to fundraise, and for all the programs that the American Diabetes Association was doing. So he was doing that storytelling using the bulk email tools, but people felt that personal connection to Ryan, to the point where at the event they all wanted to come up and meet him, because that communication occurs over the internet, over email, over a couple of months, and then when it comes to event day, that's where they absolutely want to come up and have that personal connection. And so, um, but think about how to make any of those automated touches more personal, and then do follow up as well. So sure, the automated message goes out, but to Mark's point, don't be afraid to pick up the phone. If you have a relationship where texting might be appropriate with a donor, with a fundraiser, absolutely any opportunity to reach. And it's not going to take a lot of time to do some of those extra special little touches.
Yep, for sure. So, looking at a sample calendar for an event. So if you are doing like a run or a walk, definitely plan it all out. And we have a great resource available on our website, cathexispartners.com/resources. And again, we'll share this presentation afterwards. Free resource, check it out. We worked with a couple of clients and some other consultants on putting this together. And it just kind of helps lay out what the communication strategy should be. And again, this is kind of specific to email, but think about it about the entire, the message. Once you have the email, you can convert it into social media as well. It should be, putting it out there, and how often should you email? Try once a week to start, and then if you're unsubscribed, start ticking up. Maybe think about backing off that. But that's a great resource. Now that was for event specific, maybe year round. Obviously, adjust this based on your specific organization, but find a way to incorporate. And I know, if you have a regular newsletter, what gets put into that is probably a debate and a little wrestling match within the different departments, but work on finding a path where there's always a little space for peer-to-peer fundraising every newsletter, and have that topic change based on the month or the topic that's going on. January fitness, right? Um, all the New Year's resolutions. February might be tribute or whatever is, connected with your specific mission. Maybe there's a specific day or month that's associated with that. Tie that in. DIY. Maybe there's an actual physical event. Corporates, sponsorships. Bring in teams. Maybe do live stream. So really, and then get towards the end of the year, you have Giving Tuesday and end of year giving and holiday tribute. So there's a way to incorporate this and make the message kind of throughout the entire year, but change it up so people aren't always just getting the same support us today type of messages in your newsletters. Again, just bring that emotion and feeling to it. If you happen to have an actual event, that's great. You can use images from that event that show the community and show where it's all coming from, and really make it motivational and informative. Let's see. So let's talk about technology now, right? Make sure that your solution, your peer-to-peer solution, is flexible, integrates with the CRM, mobile first. Everybody's pulling up things on their phones, normally before anything else. So make sure it looks great on a phone. Built-in automation for milestones, like we've been talking about. Reporting needs to be in there, and then email. Make sure it's very easy to email your participants and donors. And there was a question in here that I think ties into it. What's the main out-of-the-box EN P2P tool function you recommend leveraging for year-round fundraisers? Oh, John, I'm gonna give that one to you. I have some thoughts, but this is your wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, the peer-to-peer module in Engaging Networks has a ton of features available, and I think for that year-round fundraiser, so you might have a single peer-to-peer site that has multiple campaigns in it. So donate your birthday, honor memorial, etc. The key thing in there is leveraging the messaging automation within the peer-to-peer site, which you can then link to the different types of fundraisers. So there could be a separate messages built for your donate your birthday campaign. Those coaching messages can be triggered by an event day that's unique to that supporter. So maybe their birthday. So X number of days before their event, that message can get sent out. So I think the messaging automation tools, or those are individual triggered messages that go out, because that way you've got people jumping in, participating at different times of year. That really helps you leverage that, particularly for a smaller team, being able to get that automated message out when it's relevant to your supporters.
I love this. You guys are asking great questions. Which weekly fundraising report or metric do you find provides the greatest insight into where staff should focus their personal outreach to maximize fundraising success? John, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I was telling some team members about this the other day that when I worked for the MS Society, my key metric was number of people registered and amount raised, same number of days till this year's event versus last year. And I was in our peer-to-peer product meeting. I was talking with Noel, our product manager, about, hey, could we develop this as a dashboard inside the platform. So that because what that so the way I use this, so we had I think 5 different bike events in our chapter at the time. We were a little crazy. We ran so many bike events throughout the year. Um, that we did. I posted this on my door and actually just to run manual reports because we were using a product that, this was many years ago where the reporting tools weren't quite up to snuff. And so knowing that comparison over some same number of days till event, because your event date might change, it's going to change if it's, the third Saturday in June every year. Well, that date, that number, that day is going to shift based on the calendar anyway. So what I was knowing those two factors, then we were Liz and I were looking at that one day, and she said, "Well, we're behind on Toward the Vineyard. And that was her event she was primary on." And she said, "I don't like to see that number that I'm behind." I'm like, "No, no, Liz, it's not about what we're behind on. It's about what are we going to do today to change that number." And I said, "What had we done last year by this date that we haven't done this year? We hadn't done our team captain's mailing yet." So I then said, got all the labels prepared. Guess what we're doing today? We're doing our team captain mailing. 2 weeks later, that number we were ahead of last year. So that's particularly where you have an annual event. That's my favorite metric to track. But then also the fundraising naturally of then that is then going to spur you on maybe to send out a cultivation email to your supporters to remind them of what the purpose of the event is. Sure, you're putting on a great bike ride, but it's a fundraiser, number one. So you got to remind and nudge people that yes, this is a fundraising event. We're not the local bicycle club. If bike events are your thing or whatever type of event you're doing.
And then to put that question kind of on its head and say, which reports would I have that would I also not focus on personal outreach is the $0 fundraisers. I definitely would automate that so you can have a series of emails that provides different tools and tips and again success stories that you really focus in on those people that have raised nothing. But at some point I wouldn't put too much energy into them because it's a lot of times, especially if it's like a walk or a 5K, people are registered, or if it's especially if it's a timed event, they're probably just registered for a personal record, a PR, or for whatever reason, they're not there for the actual fundraising. If they happen to do some fundraising, definitely provide them the tips and tricks and tools to fundraise. But 40% plus aren't going to do fundraising in those types of cases. So I wouldn't waste too much individual energy on those people. Try to automate to bring them up and give them the things, but really focus your energy on the people that have made huge changes in the last week or the last period of time since you last looked, and take the time to pick up the phone or shoot them an email and say, "Hey, you're doing great," and they'll probably come back and tell you why, what changed, or yeah, I found this really easy, or I finally got going, or what have you.
Yeah, and also think that taking a little bit of statistical analysis of your past fundraising is really helpful. I one day had the question, where, the 80/20 rule, does that apply to walk? Does it apply to bike or any peer-to-peer event? Does 80% of the fundraising come from 20% of the participants? Was the question I was asking. And I went and analyzed that for our walk events, and it was spot on. 80% of the revenue came from 20% of the participants. So that then told the walk team, hey, guess who you want to be prioritized re-recruiting for next year? It's at 20%. Get them on board first. Certainly your team captains as well. For bike, it was even more pronounced. We had some fundraisers who really blew it out of the water. We had a fundraising minimum, I think, of 350 at the time for our 2-day bike event, which has since gone up over the years. But look at some of that. Know your statistics that are behind this. From your past performance is going to then help you then to improve on next year. And it doesn't. And another great piece of advice I got from Greg Elfers, who was the chief field development. Well, I'm going to get his title wrong. He was heading up all of our mass market events at American Diabetes Association, and he had what he called the RAM principle: retain, acquire. Sorry, it's recruit, acquire, manage. So bring back your last year participants, acquire new ones, and then manage all of them. Make sure that they're getting what they need, such that you continue the cycle year after year to constantly do that. Yeah, Mark, we've got a couple of questions in the chat. First one is around can the platform support and track P2P matches? Double donation is a feature available inside Engaging Networks. So if you're talking about company matching of the donor's gift from their employer, double donation is available in the newer version of the P2P product. We have a legacy product that'll get it's no sunset date yet on the existing on the legacy product. But the newer product, we leverage all the same fundraising features found on your Engaging Networks donation pages, which means digital wallets, which means donor advised funds, which means that we are looking though at some ways to improve how we're displaying that. So if there is an expected match, that's certainly going to come in later. How do we represent that on the fundraiser thermometer? So that's something we're talking with product about. How can we do that better in the future? If your question was more around challenge matches, a challenge match is where somebody might say the team that gets 10 or more donations gets a $500 credit on their whatever fundraising. Those are things you would handle by posting an offline gift. So you would have to track and manage what your challenge was. I know some of our university clients do quite a bit of that for giving days, and but that's also something that we've brought to product and trying to figure out ways. And those things typically tend to be unique. Challenge matches tend to be very unique per client, so it's kind of hard to productize them. So just giving you two different answers to that question, just using the word match, I could read that either way. So just want to make sure I can't.
And challenge match can often easy the most elegant way to usually support those is around the communications and around a temporary progress meter or that type of thing or so there's definitely it's and I love challenge matches because it's time sensitive. It gets people to act, quickly, and it makes them feel like their money is doing that much more, which it is. Yes, can easily be supported in more of the communications of around it, emailing and on the campaign homepage or specific call outs, separate page with a separate progress meter. Great, and thanks for bringing that up, Aaron, because that's a great suggestion and definitely something that everybody should consider doing is challenge matches.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Aaron, thanks for confirming that challenge match is what you were talking about. Great. And then we also have a question around how early in a campaign can you reliably identify the participants who are likely to become your top fundraisers? I think there's a lot of influences on this. One of the first things I look for is did they make a self gift when they registered? So are they committed to their fundraising to the point where they're going to make a donation themselves to prime the pump? What are they saying on their personal fundraising page? I know I don't know if I say it on my personal fundraising page for Bike MS, but I say it in all my appeals to my donors that I will personally match what they donate. So that turned into a real windfall for the National MS Society last year, and ended up pulling more money out of my wallet than I expected. But hey, I'm cool with that. Let's find a cure. So, and thanks to many of my teammates for jumping on that as well. But one of the things when I was at MS, I had the opportunity to bring a select number, like two or three team captains, to our national team captains rally every year. And what I really looked at was what did this fundraiser or team captain do last year, or how many years have they been doing it, and what's that? Do they have a growth trajectory? And I spent a lot of time just going out and having lunch or coffee or just talking to people on the phone to find out what's your motivation, what are your goals, what do you want to do, why are you doing this, and particularly in bike events, I found that people were very competitive. And so they want to get to be that top team, or they want to have, they had 10 people on the team that last year, they want 20 people. Have a conversation, find out what their goals are. And then that's gonna give you some clues as to who's going to be your top performers. And so, some of my team members, were doing the team captain's invite as more of a reward for, what the person raised last year. I was always looking at that up and comer. Who's going to be my next big team? Who's going to be my next mega team? And it was really about having that conversation and looking at some of those indicators.
Yeah, it's not always really clear, but definitely past performance is a big indicator of whether or not they're a team captain, and start really communicating quickly and aggressively, to their teams and getting people fundraising. All of these things can really help indicate who your top fundraisers are going to be. And as a reminder, I think this email has been going out, but and I think Marcy also just put it in the chat. There is a session on the 19th, at 11 a.m. Eastern, to kind of do a demo and walk through the latest product, the peer-to-peer product within Engaging Networks. So check that out and talk to John and Noel about what they got going on there. So let's talk about common mistakes. Oh, wait, there's another question in here. Have you found that a participant making a self-donation, like you, John, at registration is one of the strongest predators of future fundraising success, or are there other early behaviors that are even more predictive? Great question. You guys are all asking awesome questions. Yes, and that's exactly why John brought that up. If you're going to make a self-donation, first of all, it's a great way to show as a participant to the people that you're asking to support you that you're actually, not just, a freeloader asking them to do the heavy lifting. You're leading by example. And that's the first indicator. Other indicators are them updating their personal page, and putting on putting in there a true personal message on their personal page. So take the time to read a few of those that, as people register, check out their pages. You can have it flag you saying that someone updated your personal page, so that you can see who's done along the way for in these different platforms. So there's different ways to review that and check and see who's really passionate about it, and that'll be a huge indicator. So common mistakes, treating peer-to-peer as one event, right? Just having your event and doing the mic drop at the end of it. Again, forgetting about them. I'm beating that drum for sure, but it can't be said enough that quite often it's just a cyclical thing where it's just forgotten about for the rest of the year. So make it a year-round thing. Make people feel heard, make them feel important, and make them feel seen. Not coaching fundraisers, especially when it comes, well, all cases, but especially when it comes to DIY campaigns. If you build it and they will come is definitely not true. If you build it and set up you should definitely build it and set it up, but you then have to coach and you have to put out toolkits and you have to provide support for your fundraisers or potential fundraisers. You have to definitely seed it and communicate, and a lot of this can be automated, but you do have to put a bit of work in and setting it up front, and making it really, putting it out there so people know that they can join, that they're welcome to join, and understand how they can fundraise for you.
Yeah,
Um,
and on the coaching fundraisers, don't assume that your returning fundraisers know everything about your event and about your organization. Do continue to message them with updates of, what's going on in your organization. What are some of the wins that you've had? What are some of those needs? Arm your returning fundraisers with that information, because they're going to leverage that. And they've already demonstrated the ability to fundraise for your organization. They're going to grab that new info from you and they're going to use it in their fundraising messages.
well said. And yeah. The other end is launching too much, and just throwing it all out there. And again, if you put out a lot of things in a portfolio, but make sure that you offer up automated, easy ways for folks to be able to fundraise and understand it. And once you start having it going on, it becomes a legacy year over year. Every year, really, you should do this, but at least every few years, stop and take a look at what the registration flow looks like and go through it and have a friend, a peer, someone completely disconnected from the organization go through it and give you feedback on it because it's really easy to kind of get lost in the trenches of the day to day and not realize that a little tweak you made somewhere along the way made all of a sudden the registration flow or something very confusing, the funnel to actually get through and figure out how they want to fundraise. And you'll always be adapting things, and that's great, but make sure you're looking at it on a regular basis. Another mistake is just ignoring the metrics. There's the world's full of data now, right? Um, and you can definitely have analysis paralysis when you come in and look at a lot of this stuff. But looking at different reports, and I love the one that John specifically said is, yeah, compared once you have a legacy campaign going year over year, look at registrations X number of weeks out, look at funds raised X number of weeks out, look at um, average donation size, look at number of donors per participant, look at average team size, look at all those things and then look at it differently and have someone else look at it. What is the single biggest reason DIY peer-to-peer fundraising programs fall after the fail after they are launched, and what can organizations do to prevent that? You have to nurture it. You have to seed it. You have to provide toolkits, ways to make it easy for people to fundraise. It is
And nobody wants to be first on a new DIY campaign. So make sure so for your board members who are the ones saying, "Hey, launch a new peer-to-peer event," get them to register for your DIY site. So get people fundraising because then as your marketing starts to take root, people see that there's other pages on there and people are having success. They're going to jump in as well. Um, offer video on your site to explain how to fundraise. Get that's put it again. People don't. One of the best adages about fundraising is people don't give to causes. People give to people with causes. So the more you can personalize by having your face in a video on your website to explain how this thing works, what the expectation is, or getting your board members to do that, getting more of that personal flavor into your instructions and your how-tos is going to then get more people to then start saying, "Oh yeah, I can do this myself," and then get them to engage. But there's nothing worse than launching a new site with not a single page open on it. You got to stoke the fire.
Yeah, I love that answer because yeah, and soft launch any and every campaign to your board, to past team captains, make them feel, and have really a completely different communication strategy to your team captains, make them feel like they're getting insider information, they're a level up, and they have insider track because of they're important, they're the team captains. Share with them in advance, hey, come register for next year and have them start preceding it, and then it almost like feels like it slipped out there without you communicating it yet that it's even open, and it's already, you've already got 50 people registered before you know it. All right, three things to do tomorrow. Add one new campaign or start peer-to-peer fundraising at all. Maybe that's just if you don't have a peer-to-peer platform yet, maybe that's just a Facebook fundraising page or TikTok fundraiser or what have you. Figure out some type of campaign and add it to your portfolio. And if you don't have any, create one kind of DIY, fundraise your way type of campaign and name that however it fits into your mission. Fundraise your way. And that's what it's all about is making it easy. Map out a 12-month calendar. Don't, even if it's just a timed seasonal thing, because it's always good to have a specific timeline, sense of urgency, but always for specific milestones within a campaign or the entire campaign, but always map out the overall 12-month calendar. How are you going to keep people engaged throughout the year? And then create the metrics to be able to measure engagement and not just revenue. How big are the teams? Who updated their personal page? Now, that shouldn't be the first top priority because there's a whole lot of people that might turn out to be huge fundraisers and never update their personal page at all and just leave it generic. I would say take credit for that because whatever you put out as the default text, they loved enough that they didn't need to change it. So well done, you. But they might just not have gotten around to it or didn't feel like that was important to them. So, but anyways, just find all the different ways to measure and then make sure you track back to those things. All right. Um, So feel free to reach out with any questions. Check out our website. We have a lot of resources around peer-to-peer fundraising and nonprofit tech in general. We've somehow managed to kill nearly an entire hour pretty quickly here, John. Those were some great questions along the way, but we still have another minute or two and happy to answer any other ones that come up. Anything we left out? I mean, we could talk about this all day, John, but
Hmm.
uh, and you'll be talking about it again in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In 2 weeks, we're going to be doing more of a Engaging Networks product demo, and I'll be joined on that call by Noel Butler, our product manager for peer-to-peer. But there is one final question. On our soft launch recommendations to your board members and past team captains, before actually opening the campaign to the public, what level of participation or fundraising momentum? I'd say at least for, it depends on the size of your organization. If you're a smaller organization, maybe 3 to 5 pages set up in advance is a good starting point, and maybe a few more. In terms of fundraising, I'd want to see at least one or two or three donations on each one of those pages. You don't want your test pages to get listed out there as well. So if you did do any test pages, you want to close those, remove those prior to the site. So you want to polish the brass before you put the boat in the water, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Send it around internally, and neither your fundraising or number of registrants should be zero when you send out the email to everybody, if you can at all help it. If it's a really quick campaign, then everybody's going to understand, like a specific emergency relief or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, that's it. I like it. Great questions, everybody. Thank you so much for your participation, and thank you, John and Austin, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Mark. You are a wealth of information.
Back at you, my friend. Have a great day, everybody.